Good morning, everybody. Happy Easter. Faith Baptist Church Sunday School. We are going to be looking at an Easter passage, Matthew 28. Thanks, everybody, for joining. It's a little cloudy this morning, but it will be sunny on Easter Sunday. It's Saturday just before. And it's interesting, we've been talking about the timeline of Jesus and looking in John chapter 14 through John chapter 16, and thinking about the week of Jesus. And this being Saturday was one of the quietest days for the disciples and the people who love Jesus, because basically they've been through just a torment, and Jesus, of course, had been through the excruciating death on the cross for our sins, and his followers and the people that loved him had been there and had been involved, but the men basically fled. Some of the women stayed. And so it was just, Saturday was a time of people not knowing what was happening, hiding, not sure what was going to be going on. Jesus's body had been hurriedly buried into the tomb. In fact, we'll look at Matthew 28 here, but the Jewish tradition was to bury the body very quickly, no embalming. As soon as death, they would have a ceremony, a quick ceremony, and then bury the body. This was especially rushed in Jesus's case because it was getting near the Sabbath, and it was getting near sunset, and so they needed to get him into the tomb just before sunset. So that way they wouldn't be doing any work on the Sabbath. Again, Sabbath, keeping the Sabbath holy. So Matthew 28, verses 1 through 5. After the Sabbath, so now we've gone past the Sabbath. This is the next day, which would be Sunday. The first day of the week was dawning. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to view the tomb. There was a violent earthquake because the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and approached the tomb. He rolled back the stone and was sitting on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. The guards were so shaken by fear of him that they became like dead men. The angel told the women, "Do not be afraid, because I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified." Very interesting with this scenario. So it's sunrise, where we get our traditional sunrise service. We worship Easter morning, and the Moravians in Winston-Salem, some churches still do sunrise services. A lot don't anymore like they used to, but they were there remembering, churches now were remembering the time whenever the women came to the tomb. And again, I want to point out it was the women that came and that did not lose heart. The cats are having an interesting time behind me. So anyway, but the women did not lose heart. They came to make sure Jesus had a proper burial. And so that's why they were there early on the Sabbath, because he had been so rushed to be put into the tomb. And so he then, what you see here are the guards that basically they have this response. And you're thinking, how does Matthew know what the guards are saying? By the way, Alex is behind me being a rascal, so if I seem a little distracted, it's because I think he's trying to get a fly or something that's snuck in the house. Anyway, Matthew, if you remember his profession, he was a publican, not a republican, as I used to think when I was a kid, but a publican, which is a tax collector. And so he would have had connections with the Romans because he was collecting taxes for the Romans. And so that's one reason why we know we have the guards' response here. And it's interesting, if you look at the Easter story in each four Gospels, they're different, and they have different accounts, so you can have a composite picture of the Easter, the resurrection of Jesus, Easter, when you look at the different Gospels. But Matthew 28, again, you have that, basically he interviewed the Roman guards, and he had that connection to know what they saw. Because you're thinking, why would Roman guards tell somebody about this that was a follower of Jesus? And that's why, that's connection. So, and of course he knew the women as well, so that eyewitness account, Matthew interviewed them for this. Now the cats are really playing, so hope if you ever have two cats and they like to play and wrestle, especially with toys, that's the kind of sound effects you get. So those of you who have dogs or don't have any pets at all, you're thinking, goodness, what is going on in the background? So anyway, very important story here. And so I hope you've been able to follow along with this. So Matthew interviewed the women, and it's interesting because whenever Matthew was written, the book of Matthew, it was originally written in Hebrew. It was for the religious leaders. He wanted to really get that message out to them. And it was later then translated, of course, into Greek, and then, of course, our modern day translations that we have. So let's continue to look at the resurrection story. Matthew 28, verses 6 through 7. He is not here, for he is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has risen from the dead. And indeed, he is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. Listen, I have told you. This is the angel telling them this story, telling the women. Remember, the tomb was the stone was rolled away from the tomb. A bright light was there, earthquake, angel speaking to women, early sunrise. It's still kind of dark. This is the setting. You think, why would they need to, or why would the angel need to roll the stone away from the tomb to let Jesus out? And no, that's not it. Obviously, they did not need a stone to keep Jesus in the tomb. They needed to let the people in to see the tomb was empty. So that was the whole point of the stone being rolled away. If you've ever wondered that, and again, these are things I thought of too whenever I was older, and I thought, what's the point of rolling the stone away? The stone was there to seal the tomb. The Roman seal was stamped on that. They had a piece of rope that they would put around and have wax, and then have a Roman seal to seal that. So if anything was messed with, they could see the seal was broken on that stone, basically, that covered the tomb. And so, again, the tomb was empty. And so you have the angel. There's several components here, some of the notes I have. Assurance, he is not here, for he is risen. He's not here. You came to see him. You came to basically finish up the funeral service, the burial, but he is not here. The invitation saying, come and see. The stone was rolled away. Come in here and look and see how empty it is. The commission, go quickly and tell the disciples. Go tell the men that are hiding what happened. And they did. In fact, you have the story then of John running back after he heard that because he thought, what? And basically authority, these angels that were basically messengers of God. And so the angel had the authority to tell the women this story about Jesus being resurrected from the dead. Let's continue to look at Matthew 28, verses 8 through 10. So, departing quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, they ran to tell the disciples of the news. Just then Jesus met them and said, greetings. And they came up and took hold of his feet and worshipped him. And Jesus told them, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to leave Galilee, and they will see me there. This is that appearance of Jesus there in the garden. And you have one account where basically they didn't quite recognize him because they were so anxious and emotional of what had happened. You can imagine going back to the tomb of a loved one and finding it empty, and an angel there telling you what had happened and that person was alive. And another thing that's interesting, Matthew 16 and 17, and there's, I believe, 20 or 21, Jesus talks about this, that he is going to basically defeat death. And they had been hearing this. And of course, there have been metaphors as far as the temple being destroyed and rebuilt in 3 days and that sort of thing. But Jesus had been pretty clear that he was going to be killed and that he was going to basically defeat death. And so the women, I'm sure at this point, after it had kind of sank in, they're realizing this, that this is true and Jesus was really alive. And with this excitement, and this is one of the biggest holidays for Christianity. I know Christmas gets a lot of attention, lights and that sort of thing. Easter is a big time as far as, I know, Easter baskets, egg hunts, that sort of thing. A lot of people will show up to church because they feel like, okay, we need to be there on Easter. Some will go to the beach, hang out, whatever. But Easter is a big holiday for Christians, for believers. And there's really two main pillars, 2 points, really. He died on the cross, and he came to life and resurrected from the dead. He was definitely dead. He was killed on the cross. He was tortured and killed, and then he defeated death. For me as a believer, that gives me hope. For me, looking at a hopeless world, I was looking at an Easter devotional, and the lady was talking about how whenever flags would be put at half-mast whenever somebody died or like a major event. And so it was kind of rare to see the flag at half-mast. I remember that, seeing, oh, I wonder what's happened with the flag being down like that. Why? I wonder what's happened. Well, now it just seems like the flag stays at half-mast all the time, and I think our hearts are kind of like that. We're at half-mast ourselves as far as being worn down by the messages we see of the world. And this gives us hope. the resurrection of Christ. We can't forget this. I encourage you to look at, I mentioned this maybe last week, but Lee Strobel is a Christian author, The Case for Christ, The Case for Easter, and The Case for Heaven. But look at some of his works, especially if you're doubting or having thoughts of, is this really real, or is this just something that I've grown up hearing all my life? But Lee Strobel is really good as far as if you have doubts and need some reassurance. And of course, the Bible is one of the best sources of authority for our lives that we can have. I hope everybody has a great Easter. We'll see you soon.